Thank God for white privilege. So, I was just doing a stream where I was ranting over this article Kyle Korver has put out telling white people to obey the black man and basically become a second-class citizen and put the black man above the white man because that will fix racism. So I was ranting because it's just like really, really frustrating how blatantly hypocritical, stupid, backwards, illogical all of this stuff is. And all these rich sellouts in the media are all going to be parodying the same narrative to brainwash people into thinking this is actually some sort of legitimate idea, which it is, I assure you, not. And I will actually go through the... Well, I won't. I'm going to play a mirrored video of someone who, a little calmer than me, can break this down rationally without being offensive. So, yeah, while I was ranting and I was upset, because in my opinion, these people are being racist against white people. And the whole point of my video... I'm pushing boundaries, but I'm trying... That's the point of my video, is like... in an effort for them to eliminate racism, they are becoming racist. And it's retarded. Like, you can't be bigoted towards bigots, then you become a bigot. Duh. So, apparently someone wasn't really happy with what I was saying, and, you know, they think they need to curtail my freedom to express myself. And I'll say this right now, I might not agree with people, but I will actually take a bullet for your right to say stupid ass shit that's untrue and lies. Because I don't want people to tell me what I can say, so I'm not going to tell other people what they can say. Because I don't want to be a fucking hypocrite like these people who are saying it's racist to say the N-word and all this shit. So it's pretty funny. I got a community guideline strike and I appealed it. And this is what I wrote in my appeal. The point of this video is to stop racism. Please restore my video because I'm white and privileged. And, you know, I didn't believe in white privilege, but now clearly it's a thing because YouTube actually took my side on this and removed the community guideline strike. Who would have thought? I thought like I wouldn't be able to stream anymore because my ideas are too controversial for the public that's indoctrinated by the education and media that comes from the people who are creating this race baiting fantasy scenario out of where it doesn't exist. And I wanted to play this quote. This is why I titled that last stream "The Most Evil Word." It was based on this white person, Skip Bayless, saying this stuff. I just I strongly disagree with this.
Who happened to be black, and he uttered the most evil word in the English language, and it's the one that ends in the hard ER, not the one that ends in A, but ER. Yeah. White man saying that word, you are out. You have to, that word needs to be eradicated from our language, and for me, Chip Kelly had to take a stand.
We have to now eradicate a word. Whatever happened to sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Whatever happened to that? Now, words are so evil that we have to ban a word. Do we really want to start banning? Like, can we slow down and think, maybe? Do we want to start banning words? Is that the world that you want to live in? Now I'm gonna go. This is what I do. You know what I'm saying? Like, you think I'm just some
Jeffrey
fucking...
Lurie, the owner, had to take a...
You think I'm just some fucking troll? No. I mean, I use comedy to I guess, comedy. I think good comedy tells you truths about the human condition that are funny that you don't think about, I guess, consciously. Because I think we do a lot of stupid, silly shit as humans that like, if you slow down and think about what we're doing, it's hilarious because we're so fucking retarded and we don't see it. And it takes like a comedian sometimes, a good comedian. I am not that. I'm trying. And a good comedian, in my opinion, will let you know insights into the human condition, make you aware of truths that you're not really consciously aware of, because it's hilarious how stupid we are. So that's all I was trying to do, but they're trying to shut me down. And here, this guy is gonna make better points than I could because he's more knowledgeable. Well, he's read the article. I think he does a pretty decent job of breaking it down. I think he misses some. He probably doesn't see some things because I don't think people understand. People don't seem to understand that this is the main thing with this racism stuff is it's a cover for class warfare. They're acting like skin color is the issue for systematic what is it? Systematic oppression or something like that. I can't think of the right term now. God damn it. So racism is just a cover for the real issue, which is classism. It's about rich versus poor. They don't care about skin color. The only color they care about is green. And I think people are missing that point. But I'm going to play this video anyways because he does make a lot of good points. So, I don't know if people are interested on the subject. Enjoy.
Hey, how you doing? This is Benjamin Boyce, and I was on Twitter today because I'm on Twitter sometimes during the day. And there is this section on Twitter, on every page of Twitter, that is Trends for You. And in Trends for Me was this trend. Oh, it suddenly disappeared, but it was about this guy named Kyle Korver, who is a player for the Utah Jazz, which is a basketball team. Now, full disclosure, I don't really understand how basketball works. I watch the game. I mean, I understand how the points work and stuff like that, but I just can't really make out the action. It's just this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth thing. But, you know, Twitter's kind of like the same thing. It's just like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Oh, three-pointer. Anyway, so he came out, this guy, Kyle Korver, came out with this article titled simply Privileged. And Twitter said, it quoted one line from it about how he has decided to hold white men specifically accountable for their racism. So he writes this article, and the first part of it, he's talking about how, you know, the people that he works with are mostly black and sometimes they would get in trouble. And he really examines like his reaction to when another player gets in trouble at a nightclub, and how, like, if the player's black, he won't think about, oh, I hope he's okay, but he will wonder, well, what did that guy do that got him in trouble? As if it's not natural to think when somebody gets in trouble, why they would be getting in trouble. Even if you do care for them, you're still thinking, well, what did they do? We don't presume innocence. We have a legal system where we're trying to implement the presumption of innocence because our natural reaction is to presume guilt. And this is exactly what he does in this article. He presumes guilt, even though he doesn't call it guilt. So he talks about this one incident with his friend, then he talks about another co-player or teammate or colleague upon the court that was confronted by a fan in a very racist manner. And he doesn't get into exactly what happened on that, but this triggered him to have this deep insight into his views on race. And as you can imagine, because Twitter promoted this, his views on race are that white people are the bad guys. Why are white people the bad guys? Because it's America. So I just want to skip the first couple sections and get to the point where he starts to talk about his solutions to this problem. I'm trying to ask myself what I should actually do. How can I, as a white man, part of this systemic problem, become part of the solution when it comes to racism in my workplace, in my community, in this country? These are the questions that I've been asking myself lately, and I don't think I have all the answers yet. But here are the ones that are starting to ring the most true. Now, how does something ring true for Kyle Korver? I think it mostly rings true on the level of the feelings, not necessarily on the level of procedural logic or deep thinking about these issues, as is very evidenced in the way that he thinks there's solutions to these problems. So the first solution is, I have to continue to educate myself on the history of racism in America. Now, I don't have any problem with that. I think, understanding the history of America is great. However, it seems like he wants us to understand or to look at racism through a singular lens, because the second solution is, I have to listen. I'll say it again because it's important. I have to listen.
That's what the fucking problem is. Y'all listen. Well, what am I supposed to do? Eat it? No. You're supposed to hear it.
This is something that crops up over and over and over again, especially in discussions about racism in America. The white people are supposed to listen. And sometimes that's even put in caps. He didn't use caps. He actually just used italics or emphasis in this article, how it was printed. Maybe that's just a formatting error. I don't know. But we're really called upon to listen. Listening doesn't do anything in and of itself. You really need to digest what you hear, or else it doesn't really matter. Listening in and of itself is not an action. And insofar as people think it is an action, what they really mean is obedience. They don't mean so much listen as they mean believe. His third solution is, I have to support leaders who see racial justice as fundamental, as something that's at the heart of nearly every major issue in our country today. And I have to support policies that do the same. What if, this is a question, and you're not supposed to ask a question, what if racism is not at the heart of every single issue in America today? You will only reach a skin-deep understanding of an issue if you force yourself to support people who agree with you and only listen to people who agree with you. It's very obvious that this is not a solution at all. His fourth solution is, I have to do my best to recognize when to get out of the way in order to amplify the voices of marginalized groups that so often get lost. I really don't think that amplifying voices of marginalized groups in and of itself is going to limit the marginalizations. We pay attention and we foster good ideas, right? And how do we come to the conclusion of whether an idea is good or not? We really think about it. We ask questions about it. We enter into dialogue, which is the opposite of just listening and obeying and believing. We enter into a critical examination of various factors and, dive into the messy complexity of the issue. When you reduce the issue that is this big systemic problem into a singular solution, or the singular root of all causes for all problems, you're never going to get anywhere other than amplifying that problem. Because you're going to see it everywhere, and then you're going to be boosting people within these marginalized groups that want that problem to persist for a variety of reasons, or don't really understand how to solve the problem, because we're not allowed to really engage with the problem. Now, when I first started doing my work on Evergreen, I was very reticent to get into issues of race. I'd been taught at Evergreen that this racial problem was so big, and I was never presented any actual solutions to it other than listening and obeying and understanding my privilege, putting myself in my place, stepping out of the way of the marginalized groups. But that didn't really work at Evergreen. It did not work at Evergreen because the people in the marginalized groups who were the loudest voices, who were the most selfish people, who actually probably have some mental problems, never got feedback, never got pushback, and so just amped up their behavior of being right and thinking they're right, and then not really understanding how they failed, not really being given the chance to understand that they failed and to really critically get into the reasons why their methods didn't work or won't work. To continue, but maybe more than anything, I know that as a white man, I have to hold my fellow white men accountable. We all have to hold each other accountable. Now, those two statements don't really work. Either one thing is true or the other thing is true, insofar as he believes. Either he, as a white man, needs to hold white men accountable, and white men have to hold other white men accountable, or we all hold each other accountable, and we all work on this together in an open forum, and we really give room for people to express their opinions and not shut them down or shut them up or disagree with them out of the gate, but really try to understand, really listen to the people from all different perspectives. And in that act of listening, actually, okay, so I'm gonna betray my own self and say, yes, you can actually get a lot accomplished with listening, but that listening has to be an active act of listening and responding. So if somebody is racist, you listen to them, you start to ask questions about their behavior and their attitudes and where those attitudes and behaviors come from. And in that act of sympathy, I really do believe that that is the way forward, to lessen the anger, to lessen that hardness that people have towards stereotyping other groups. That's the way forward. Anyways, and we all have to be accountable. So either everybody's accountable to everybody or only the groups are accountable to the other groups and then responsible for everything else. We'll get into that in just a bit, his whole notion of responsibility. And we all have to be accountable, period. Not just for our own actions, but also for the ways that our inaction can create a safe space for toxic behavior. Now, there is a grain of truth in that. We do need to hold each other accountable, and by means of social pressure, just limit the ability for people to express certain things in certain ways. But that's not enough for him. Overt racism, of course, is not enough for him. We'll get to that in just a second. I'm going to finish up this section. And I think the standard that we have to hold ourselves to in this crucial moment, it's higher than it's ever been. We have to be active. We have to be actively supporting the causes of those who've been marginalized. Just if you've been marginalized, then we just automatically support you. That's a horrible idea. We all have limited resources. We need to be discretionary with our attention, with our income, with our moralizing. We have to say, okay, this person is a part of this group, but they have the best interests of the group at heart. Not because they're a part of the group, but because their ideas are good. But to finish his sentence, sorry, I got ahead of it. We have to be actively supporting the causes of those who've been marginalized precisely because they've been marginalized. So what he's allowing to happen is the same stuff that happened at Evergreen. If you put your marginalization first, you will then get to go around marginalizing everybody else, even your own group, by your behavior. Two concepts that I've been thinking about a lot lately are guilt and responsibility. When it comes to racism in America, I think that guilt and responsibility tend to be seen as more or less the same thing. But I'm beginning to understand how there's a real difference between guilt and responsibility. What is guilt? What is responsibility? He doesn't define it. He just goes on to say, as white people, are we guilty for the sins of our forefathers? No, I don't think so. But are we responsible for them? Yes, I believe we are. Now, this is just the same thing as saying, I am not religious, but I'm spiritual, right? He's saying, we're not guilty, but we're responsible. It's a distinction without a meaningful difference because he's not actually making a difference yet. But maybe he's going to go forward with this. Let's give him a little bit more rope to either hang himself or string us along. And I guess I've come to realize that when we talk about solutions to systemic racism, which he hasn't precisely defined, he just trots out some stats, police reform, workplace diversity, affirmative action, has that really worked? Does diversity in and of itself work? Better access to health care, even reparations. It's not about guilt. It's not about pointing fingers or passing blame. It's about responsibility. It's about understanding that when we've said the word equality for generations, what we've really meant is equality for a certain group of people. Has that actually sustained? Has equality not like actually grown and grown and grown to encompass more than just the landed gentry, but more and more people and seeping into more and more aspects of life? For him, it's not. This is the most crucial moment right now. 2019 is the same as 1719. There's really no difference fundamentally. It's about understanding that when we've said the word inequality for generations, what we've really meant is slavery and its aftermath. Does all inequality come from slavery? According to him, we cannot question or look at any other policy or any other leadership that might engage in this discussion. He's just going forward and making this slam dunk, so he thinks, and equating this one term with this other term. Whenever we've spoken of inequality, we've actually meant slavery and its aftermath. Maybe to a certain extent, yes, but we're not having a multivariate analysis of this, are we? To continue, it's about understanding on a fundamental level, talk about fundamentalism, that black people and white people, they still have it different in America. And that those differences come from an ugly history, not some random divide. And it's about understanding that Black Lives Matter and movements like it matter because, why? Well, let's face it. I probably would have been safe on the street that one night in New York, and my teammate wasn't. And I was safe on the court from a slur, and my teammate wasn't. So these movements matter because the issues haven't been solved. And where do these issues come from? Does it come from ignorance? That's what I think. It comes from just ignorance, not in this big, bad, moralistic way, but just people not really having exposure to the humanity of others. And to enforce this accountability of listening on people of these groups is going to widen the divide. But still, it's not about overt racism for him, and this is the craziest part of the essay, but as disgraceful as it is that we have to deal with racist hecklers in NBA arenas in 2019, the truth is, you could argue that that kind of racism is easier to deal with, because at least in those cases, the racism is loud and clear. There's no ambiguity, not in the act itself, and thankfully not in the response. We throw the guy out of the building, and then we ban him for life. But in many ways, the more dangerous form of racism isn't that loud and stupid kind. It isn't the kind that announces itself when it walks into the arena. It's the quiet and subtle kind. The kind that almost hides itself in plain view. It's the person who does and says all the right things in public. They're perfectly friendly when they meet a person of color. They're very polite, but in private, well, they sort of wish that everyone would stop making everything about race all the time. It's the kind of racism that can seem almost invisible, which is one of the main reasons why it's allowed to persist. Well, how are you going to stop people from having a different opinion from you if they're not allowed to talk about it? If they're only allowed to agree with you and the people that you're championing by dint of the fact that they are marginalized, not because they have any good ideas. And so, again, banning a guy like Russ's heckler, to me, that's the easy part. But if we're really going to make a difference as a league, as a community, and as a country on this issue, it's like I said, I just think we need to push ourselves another step further. First, by identifying that less visible, less obvious behavior is what it is. Racism. It's so limiting that every act of disagreement is now given the label of racism. Racism just basically for him defines every act of inequality and every act of marginalization and every act of rudeness everywhere for all time. It's all about this one thing. What is this one thing? He doesn't get into it other than saying that it's all about slavery. Slavery kind of ended a while ago. And so here's the point in the episode where I make a tremendous jump cut because I read that whole thing and then I interpreted the whole thing and then I went off to work and then I came back and I edited the whole thing down and I looked at my interpretation and I saw all the problems with the way in which my interpretation would be interpreted because this issue is so incendiary. And by that, I mean that people only ever seem to be able to argue about this. There's no other way to talk about this thing other than an argument. So I kind of want to sidestep the whole thing and just point out that it seems to me that this man, this basketball player, is used to running up and down the court and making these very clearly defined goals within his game, doesn't really understand the complexity of a conversation of this magnitude, which is no fault of him. I'm not looking down on him for being able to do that, but he does have a voice and his voice needs to be challenged. And what he did, his first move, was to say that there's no challenging this stuff. And I cannot abide any sort of reading of things that says that the only way to fruitfully engage with the problem is to obey a certain solution. I cannot do that. And furthermore, what he seems to want to do is to say, look, there's this overt racism over here, and we have a way of dealing with it. We kick the person out, and we shut them down. And then there's all this other stuff that's more subtle. Does he really want to be more subtle with the solution, with all this subtle racism? No. It never works that way. It always works in this conversation that the subtle racism needs to be dealt with in the same way that the overt racism is dealt with, where we shut that person down, where we call them all these names and we pin them into this box, which is the same exact mode of conceptualizing another person that leads to racism. It's a crude manner of engaging with the world. And anti-racism, insofar as I read this person's anti-racism, is just as crude as the original problem. And that crudity only makes the problem bigger. Why? Because that's not how you deal with people. That's not how you engage with people. Being welcoming, being inspiring is not about just making a simple statement that everybody can stand up and cheer for. It's not about that. And that's why games are so freaking amazing, because they reduce everything into this one simple goal where we can say, this is the solution, this is the point, this is how I get it, or how I didn't get it, or why I got a foul. And then when there's that interpretation, everybody gets mad. And even we get to be mad about the interpretation because we see that the rules are more ambiguous than we want them to be. And when you want to enter into the subtle forms of problems, the way in which you deal with those problems no longer have a definite goal. They don't, because you're dealing ultimately with other human beings. And what you're trying to do ultimately is get them to relax. And going around and holding people accountable and telling them to shut up is not going to have that effect. That all being said, I do understand that this guy's trying to act out of some good feeling, but I've seen the outcome of this sort of thinking, and it's horrible. It's the exact opposite of what these people, at least nominally, want. And this, again, is just another way of unpacking the virtue to noise ratio of a blip on the public discourse spectrum. My name is Benjamin Boyce. Here's a cat video. I hope you guys have a good night.
Hey, Billy. Hey, Mark. Good to see you, man. Please, sit down. These are the guys. Guys, Billy. Boys. How's it going? It's going all right. How you been? Are you filling out that chair?
Hello? Anybody can be my nigga, man. To be real, everybody a nigga to me. You know what I'm saying? I say my nigga all the time. You know, I be a white dude, black people, you know, and don't matter who it is. I just be like, yo, what's good, my nigga? You know what I'm saying? Everybody, like, nigga, that's just a word, bro. Like, we can't, the word only have as much power as you put to it. You know what I'm saying? You gotta tap into a deeper level, you know what I'm saying? Think higher.
Let the white kid say nigga. 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 They probably gon' say it anyway. They already say it every day. White girls ain't trippin', boo. White man be my nigga too. Let the white kid say nigga. 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 They probably gon' say it anyway. They already say it every day. White girls ain't trippin', boo. White man be my nigga too. I don't fight hate with hate. No. Keep the hate out my face. People be so amazed by what I'm about to say. Okay. Everybody is a nigga. What? White, black, yellow, brown. Really? Skin color don't matter. What? You can still be down. I ain't never been racist. Yeah. I ain't never been dumb. Either smart or you stupid. You can only pick one. Started out Pangea, then the continental drift. Different sides of the equator. Now we look like this. My brother, my sister. Don't we all bleed red? Don't we all shit brown? Yeah, you heard what I said. So what he said, nigga. Am I supposed to get mad? No, my favorite color green. Can it help me get a bag? Let the white kid say nigga. Let the the white kids say nigga. Let the white kids say nigga. Let the white kids say nigga. They probably gon' say it anyway. They already say it every day. White girls, I ain't trippin', boo. White man be my nigga too. Let the white kids say nigga. 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 They probably gon' say it anyway. They already say it every day. White girls, I ain't trippin', boo. White man be my nigga too. What would Martin Luther King say? What would Martin Luther King do? Had a dream about white women. Got me feeling like a king too. Free at last, free at last. Got friends, tell them come through. One white girl, one black. Bust two nuts, 1, 2. Can we all get along? What has the world come to? I just think we should love. We should kick it like Kung Fu. Why do we fight over coloring? Them are Crips and Republicans. We should focus on some other shit, like improving the government. You ain't no different from me. Ain't you from Adam and Eve? You can say nigga with me. Don't you be trying to be mean? Got the blood of a king. It ain't no hate in my heart. I forgive y'all ancestors. Can't let it tear us apart. Let the white kids say nigga. 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 They probably gon' say it anyway. They already say it every day. White girls, I ain't trippin', boo. White man be my nigga too. Let the white kids say nigga. 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 They probably gon' say it anyway. They already say it every day. White girls, I ain't trippin', boo. White man be my nigga too.